The diner sat just off Highway 61 in rural Missouri, its fading neon sign buzzing softly as dusk settled in. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of fried food and burnt coffee, the familiar sounds of cutlery and quiet conversation filling the room. At the edge of the parking lot, Maria Alvarez paused beside her aging sedan, her hands resting on the steering wheel as she gathered the courage to step out. She was 32, a single mother, and the strain of weeks without steady work showed clearly in her tired eyes. Her 2 young children waited inside the car, hungry but silent, used to waiting. Maria adjusted her worn jacket and walked into the diner, keeping her head low. She chose a moment when the counter was less busy and approached the shift manager. Rick Dalton, a stocky man in his 40s who wore impatience as naturally as his uniform. Speaking softly and carefully, Maria explained that she was struggling and asked if there might be any leftover food at closing time that her children could eat. She made it clear she wasn't asking for money or charity, just food that would otherwise be thrown away. Rick didn't bother to lower his voice. He looked her up and down with open disdain and accused her of trying to get a free meal. Maria tried to respond, her words shaking but polite, insisting she only wanted to feed her kids. Instead of listening, Rick stepped around the counter, his frustration turning physical. He grabbed her arm and shoved her toward the door, telling her to leave immediately or he would call the police. The diner fell uncomfortably quiet. A few customers froze mid-bite. Others stared at their tables, unsure whether to intervene. Maria stumbled, barely catching herself from falling. Her arm throbbed where Rick's fingers had dug in, and her face burned with humiliation. She apologized instinctively, even though she had done nothing wrong, and begged him to let her explain. Rick cut her off, shouting that he didn't tolerate beggars in his establishment. As he pushed her closer to the exit, he failed to notice the sound growing louder outside, the deep, unmistakable rumble of multiple motorcycle engines pulling into the parking lot. Headlights cut through the dusk as 5 large bikes came to a stop. Through the diner's glass windows, leather-clad riders removed their helmets, their eyes locking onto the scene unfolding inside. They exchanged brief looks, their expressions hardening as they realized what was happening. Rick, still focused on forcing Maria out, had no idea that his actions had just drawn the attention of the very last. People he wanted watching. Heavy chime that cut through the tension in the room. 5 bikers stepped inside, moving with calm confidence rather than aggression. Their leather jackets bore the patch of a veteran's riding club, faded but well cared for. The man in front, tall with a streak of gray in his beard, took in the scene in seconds. Maria pressed near the door, her face pale and Rick standing too close, his posture still hostile. In a steady voice, the biker asked if there was a problem. Rick scoffed and told them it was none of their business, insisting he was dealing with a trespasser. The biker didn't argue. He simply pointed to Maria's arm, already beginning to show red marks, and asked whether putting hands on a woman was standard policy at the diner. The question landed heavily, and several customers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Before Rick could answer, a woman from a nearby booth spoke up, saying she had seen everything. Another customer nodded, confirming that Maria had only asked for leftover food. The room slowly found its voice, and the manager's earlier bravado began to drain away. Rick tried to defend himself, but his words sounded weak even to his own ears. The biker leader introduced himself, calmly, and explained that his group had just returned from a charity ride for struggling families in the area. He made it clear they weren't there to cause trouble, but they would not ignore someone being mistreated. He reminded Rick that assault was a serious offense, and that security cameras and witnesses made the situation very clear. The threat was unspoken but unmistakable. Rick stepped back, suddenly aware of how exposed he was. His tone changed, turning defensive, then quiet. One of the bikers approached the counter, pulled out his wallet, and paid for several hot meals without ceremony. Another gently guided Maria outside, speaking to her in a reassuring voice as he carried the food to her car. In the parking lot, Maria watched her children's faces light up as they were handed warm plates of food. Tears welled in her eyes, not just from relief, but from the simple kindness shown to her. Inside, the biker leader informed Rick that the incident would be reported to corporate management and local authorities. When the bikers finally left, the sound of their engines faded into the night, leaving behind a diner filled with silence and a lesson about dignity, accountability, and the power of standing up for someone who cannot.